You know you need to get laid and you are on vacation. Just consider it one more destination that is not on your dime, Emily said. I'm a money person and that makes a lot of sense to me. Erica laughed and shook her head. She looked at Cassandra and Emily and shrugged. I'll let you know what I've decided. Talk later. We all know what you've decided, sis. Safe journey, Emily said before she hung up. Erica looked at the screen for a few seconds and shook her head. She tossed the iPad aside and laid down on the bed, wondering what she was going to do next. Well, I do want to go, that's for sure, but what is he going to think? Her train of thought was lost when she remembered that she stopped thinking of what he thought of her the previous day. She got up from the bed and walked to the bathroom and turned on the water, before she took her clothes off. As she stood under the running water, she could feel herself feeling more and more inclined to the idea of visiting Venezuela, and by the time she was out of the bathroom, she knew exactly what she wanted to do.
Chapter 7. When Erica showed up at Daniel's suite with one of her bags, Daniel couldn't help but smile. He had seen this coming long before she had. He looked at her bag and shook his head. Is this it? He asked. I have 2 more in my room, she said. I'll send for them. Right now you need to have your passport handy because I booked us on a flight later this evening, he said. She looked at him and raised an eyebrow. I knew you would come around, he smiled. If she was not so happy at that moment, she would have been offended, but she didn't really care. She didn't mind stepping into the next chapter of whatever this was. But when they got to Caracas, Daniel had another favor to ask of her, a favor she wasn't so sure about. You know what would be really good? He asked. She shrugged and shook her head. What? I think that you being by my side would be a great idea, he said. She shook her head and shrugged. I don't know the first thing about this market, she said matter-of-factly. Well, you could be my legal advisor or something, he said. You own 30% of a company worth $30 million and you don't have legal representation? She frowned. He frowned and then smiled. Yeah, that's what I thought, she said. Come on, you'd be my muse in there, he teased. Really? Did you turn into Vince Van Gogh overnight? She asked, smiling. He looked at her and shook his head before he took a step forward. Okay, if I am 100% honest, are you going to come with me? Do a good job at convincing me and we'll see. Okay, fine. I have never come here without some kind of company, mostly lawyers or anyone. I need to go in there with someone, otherwise these damn Venezuelans will eat me alive, he said. But I don't even know what to wear or what to say. She started before he shrugged. We can always stop at a store on the way. We can get you everything you need, he said with a smile. She looked into his eyes and smiled as he pulled her close to kiss her. Fine, let's go, she said with a smile. He slipped an arm around her waist and walked her out to the car. She didn't remember the last time a man treated her like this. She was even more surprised when he took her to a clothing store. When she looked at the price tags, she wasn't sure she wanted to be there. But Daniel looked at her and handed the store clerk his credit card. You know you don't have to do that, right? She said as she looked at him. I brought you out here. You are my responsibility, he said with a smile. No, I'm not, she shook her head as she looked at him. What? I have to take care of my woman? Daniel said as he held her. She raised an eyebrow at him. Now I'm your woman? Well, I would like you to be. Is that a problem? He asked as he pulled her close to him and brushed her lips with his. She shook her head and smiled. She actually liked how that sounded. She looked at him and kissed him softly before she grabbed a dress from the racks and walked to the changing room. She smiled when she got to the changing room. What are you doing, Erica? You are acting like you are this man's girlfriend, she thought as she changed into the green dress she'd picked off the rack. She walked out of the changing room and looked at her reflection. She was still looking at her reflection when Daniel walked over to where she was. Not bad, he said in a low voice. Not sure those were the words I was going for, she said with a smile. He nodded and handed her an eggshell white dress. Try this on. I think you'll like it, he said with a smile before he let his hand slip to her ass. Daniel, we are in public, in South America, she said in a whisper. So? No one's watching or anything, he said as he looked at her. She looked at him and shook her head before she walked to the changing room again. She looked at the dress Daniel had handed her and smiled. It was perfect to say the least. She took off the green dress and put on the fitted white sleeveless knee-length dress before she pulled the side zipper up. Damn, she thought as she looked at her reflection. She especially loved the neckline beadwork that accentuated her perfect cleavage. The fitted dress even made her ass look bigger than it actually was. Or was it that her ass made the dress look especially good? Daniel had a smile on his face when she walked out. They might just give me the company when they see you, he said as she walked towards the mirror. The store clerk walked up to her and handed her a pair of blue red-bottomed peep-toe Louboutins. Oh my God! These are perfect, she said as she put on the shoes. They looked perfect with the white dress she had on. The way she had her hair in a tight bun made her look especially sexy. That is exactly what I wanted to see, he said in a low voice as his eyes went up and down her body. Really, it's not too much? She asked as she looked at him. Not at all, he smiled and signaled the store clerk to run up the bill. Do you have any idea how beautiful you are? He asked. Erica felt her cheeks flush as he looked at her. Stop it, she said, looking away. He held her chin and turned her to look into her eyes. No, Erica Hayes, I mean it. You are beautiful, he said in a soft voice as he looked at her. He lowered his head and kissed her softly. Now let's go and close that deal, he said before they walked out of the store. Erica could not really explain what she felt as she walked into the meeting on Daniel's arm, but when the meeting was done, she knew exactly what eye candy meant. The company representatives had been giving her a look that made her feel like she was naked in a room full of men. And she knew that they were even more impressed when she offered her legal advice to Daniel every so often. By the time they left the meeting, all Daniel wanted to do was strip her and have his way with her. And she knew it too. She was rubbing her ass against his hand in the elevator, and even though they couldn't speak to each other while inside there, Daniel was giving her looks that gave her the exact picture of what he had in store for her. It was nice to see you again, Señorice. We're sorry for the confusion, Ramon Suarez, the company CFO, said when they got to the ground floor. I'm just glad it's all settled now, Daniel said as he shook Ramon's hand. It was nice to meet you, Erica Hayes, Ramon said as he kissed the back of Erica's hand. The pleasure was all mine, Mr. Suarez, she said with a smile before Ramon walked away. She took a step to her right, getting closer to Daniel as they walked. Her ass was brushing against his hand, making him grossly uncomfortable. He wanted to throw her on the floor right there and then. Don't do that, he said in a low voice as they walked out of the office building. Don't do what? She asked, as if she didn't know what he was talking about. You know what you're doing. You are teasing me, he said in a low voice. She looked at him over her shoulder and shrugged. She was intentionally swaying her hips, knowing that he was looking at her. She was about to open the car door when Daniel took a quick step forward and opened the door for her. She looked at him and smiled in gratitude before she got into the car. Daniel walked round the front of the car and got in next to her. The embassy, por favor, he said to the driver. He had a smile on her face as he turned and looked at Erica. Maybe bringing you to the meeting was a bad idea, he said in a whisper. Come on, don't hurt my feelings, she said as she looked at him.
Oh no, this adult scene has been taken out and is exclusively available for Romancely Premium members. Check the description below to sign up. The love scene references Her next man's a billionaire. Chapter 7, Love Scene 3.
Daniel held her tightly and planted a kiss on her shoulder. At that moment, he knew one thing for sure. He never wanted this vacation to end.
Chapter 8. Erica did not expect for her and Daniel to stay in Caracas for too long, but when she found herself going up the Avila mountain on her 4th day, she realized that she had maybe deviated from her vacation plans long enough. Even though she was technically still on vacation in Caracas, she somehow thought that it would have been better if she just stuck to her own list of preferred destinations. When Daniel first suggested that they go up the mountain, Erica was not so sure how she felt about it. First of all, she was not a very outdoorsy person. The most she had ever done that would make anyone consider her adventurous was visit Mount Rushmore, and even then it was not her idea. It was one of those family things that you wish you could get away from, yet somehow you find yourself posing for photos at the very place you swore you would never visit. "You are going to love it, trust me," Daniel had said. "I'm telling you, this is a bad idea, trust me," she'd said, trying to get out of the whole thing. "I think by now I have a pretty good idea of what your tastes are like, and I'm almost 80% sure that you will love Avila," he'd said in his defense. Erica raised an eyebrow. "If you don't like it, I will give you a pass." "What kind of pass?" Erica asked as she looked at him. "You can have anything you want from me for an entire day," he said. "Just a day?" she asked, a smile playing on her lips. "A day isn't long enough for you? Fine, we can always do 2, he said, smiling. "But if you like it, then I get the same deal." "Deal?" She nodded before she walked to the bathroom. She already had on a pair of neon blue jeans and a white sleeveless top. She braided her hair and held it together in a loose side bun, before she touched up her makeup and put on a pair of sandals. "Ready," she announced when she walked out of the bathroom. "Or wait, trainers would make more sense, right?" she asked as she looked at him. "No, you are perfect. I mean, I am wearing sandals too, right?" he said with a smile. "What kind of mountain climbing are we going to do? I mean, I am no pro climber, but I know for sure that sandals are not the way to go," she said. "We are not doing the conventional mountain climbing," he said. "What else are you not telling me?" She eyed him suspiciously. Daniel walked towards her and slipped an arm around her waist before pulling her to him. "You look breathtaking," he said in a whisper before he brought his head down to kiss her. She pulled away when his lips brushed hers and looked at him from his gray Echo t-shirt to his dark blue jeans. "And you look awesomely hot," she said as she looked at him. He kissed her again. This time her hands were running all over him. She pulled back again and held the back of his neck. "Remember, you get what you want if and only if I actually like this trip to Mount Avila," she said with a smile. "So you didn't like that?" he teased. She shrugged and he slid his hand down to her ass and cupped it. "How about that?" His voice was lower this time round. She looked into his eyes and pulled away from him, but he pulled her into his arms again. "Are we ever going to leave? Or are you just going to stand here and make me strip you right now?" she asked in a whisper. "Now that you've said that, I kind of like that idea," he grinned. And she knew that he meant it too because she could feel his crotch pressing against her thigh. She looked at him and pulled back again before she grabbed her bag from the bed. "We better get going or I will make you sit through mani-pedis and hours of chick flicks," she said as she walked towards the door. Daniel shrugged and followed her out. He was still giving her that look she knew a little too well as they rode in the elevator. "We could still go back, it's not too late," he whispered in her ear. "Let's just get this mountain business out of the way and then later I am going to show you the time of your life," she said in a low, seductive voice just as the elevator doors opened. She knew what that kiss earlier was doing to him, and she loved the fact that he was like butter in her hand when he was aroused. She was still smiling when they got into the car. The drive to the mountain wasn't long at all, but as soon as they got there, She understood why he thought that sandals were a good idea. She was looking at a cable car station at the foot of the mountain. She looked at Daniel and smiled at him. "So that is what you meant when you said I didn't need trainers, huh?" she said. He took her hand and led her towards one of the cable cars. She took a flyer from one of the attendants as they headed to their designated car. She looked at it and smiled. "Experience the mountainous side of Santiago de León de Caracas." She stopped and looked at Daniel. "Santiago de León de Caracas?" "That's the official name of Caracas," he said. "Experience the mountainous side of Santiago de León de Caracas as we go up. Feast your sights on the leafy canopy before we descend back down behind the mountain towards the coast to the coastal city of Macuto," she read. "Sounds interesting," she said as she looked at the flyer. "It does, doesn't it?" he said as they looked around. She looked at him as a loud announcement over a PA system notifying them that they were about to leave. She looked at him and smiled. "You've been here before?" she asked. "Actually, I've always wanted to be here, but the last few times I've been here, it's like I never got the time." "So we get to take the Virgin trip together," she said matter-of-factly as she rested her head on his shoulder. She looked around as they started the climb. She could not help but think of how much her sister would have loved this place. Even though she and Emily were born on the same day, they were extreme opposites. Emily was everything Erica was not. She had gone camping and hiked up the Himalayas just for fun. Erica never understood that. Her idea of fun was going out to a 5-star restaurant and spoiling herself with a good lobster every so often, or maybe splurge on a shopping spree. But as they went up the mountain, Erica almost understood her sister's love of nature. Seeing the mountain from so high made her feel like she was standing on top of the world. "This is beautiful," she said in a whisper as they rode up. Daniel nodded. "Yeah, it is," he said in a low voice. "Do you know at some point the cable car service had been neglected for 2 decades? She looked at him and shook her head. "No, I didn't know that, and why would the government allow such a lucrative thing to shut down for that long?" Apparently, the cable car service and the hotel up ahead were both projects done during the dictatorship of Marcos Jimenez. It was a great thing. Perhaps the only good thing he saw through his rule, but when his rule collapsed, the whole project became neglected. Maybe the people saw it as a symbol of one of the most terrible eras of their lives, he explained. "It's a good thing the project got restored, right?" she asked as she looked around. "I know, I would have hated to think that all this would go to waste." Apparently, the place gets more than 4,000 visitors a weekend. The place has been totally turned around. It has so much more to offer. Themed restaurants, an ice rink. I've been looking to get something similar going in the States. As an investor, of course, he said. She looked at him and shook her head. "Really? Aren't you satisfied with supplying America with all the home appliances they need? Well, there is so much more money can do for you. I mean, that's the whole idea of investment, right? Having the money work for you?" he asked. She looked at him and shrugged. She did have a number of investment options herself. She didn't even know or understand how she got herself into some of them. "You're right. I own 40% of a bakery, and I don't even know how I got myself into it," she added with a smile. "Bakery, huh? And do you bake?" She smiled and nodded. "I do, especially after a long day. Nothing calms my mind more than a nice, fluffy chocolate cake. I love the occasional pound cake too, but the frosting is what really gets me going," she said. "This is a whole new side of you I am finding out," he smiled. "Well, there is so much more to me that you are yet to find out," she teased. "And I cannot wait to uncover each and every layer," he said in a soft voice. She looked into his eyes and smiled up at him. "Maybe I can bake you something sometime," she said in a soft voice. "And maybe I can make you pancakes sometime," Daniel said. He looked at her and shrugged. "Well, that's the only thing I know how to make anyway," he added with a smile. She laughed as he planted a kiss on her forehead. She looked outside at the beautiful scenery as she took photos on her phone. Her sister would definitely want to see those photos.
Chapter 9. When they finally got down from the mountain, Erica had a rush like she had never had before, but she was also hungry. They had left the hotel without having any food. She noticed a man standing at a corner selling what looked like croissants. "Oh, those look so good," she started as she walked towards the man. Daniel held her hand and pulled her back. "Actually, I know just where we are going to get a perfect American snack," he said as he led her to the opposite direction. "But they look so tempting," she protested. "More tempting than a hot dog on a stick?" he asked as he looked at her. "Hot dog on a stick? Seriously, here? I picked up a few tricks last time I was here. As it turns out, Ramon's sister went to school in the States, and she picked up a few tricks while out there. So when she found this place down here, she was over the moon," he said, as they walked towards a small diner. "Oh my God, I feel like I am right back at home," she said with a smile as they walked into the small diner and took a seat at the counter. "This is so exciting," she said in a low voice. Daniel smiled at her as he placed their order. As Erica looked around, she couldn't help but notice how similar the diner was to the hot dog on a stick joints she knew back at home. "Oh my God! Hot dogs, fries, large frizzy drinks? I'm definitely not feeling homesick," she said as she bit into a crispy French fry. "I knew you would like it," he said as he looked at her. "So, tell me about your sister. Apart from the fact that you are fraternal, what else do I have to know?" he asked. She bit into another fry and shrugged. "A whole lot," she said as she looked at him. "For starters, I was the more laid-back one, have always been, really. She likes the outdoors and strange things like yoga and stuff." "What do you mean strange things like yoga? Your body screams yoga and Pilates. It's hard for me to believe that you don't like it." "No, I love yoga. I actually do yoga stretches twice a week." She smiled and shrugged. Daniel shook his head, confused. "I don't get it." She smiled as she picked up her hot dog. "What I mean is, she is the kind of person who would rather do unassisted water births and stuff like that, while I would definitely opt for an epidural," she explained. "I don't even know how she ended up in accounts. Given her personality, I was sure that she would end up selling her homemade jewelry." Daniel looked at her and laughed. "Accounts? Yeah. I think she only puts on formal wear because she can't go to work in weird tribal paint and beads," Erica said before she took another bite of her French fries. "Oh, come on. Aren't you being a little hard on her?" Daniel asked before he took a long sip of his cold soda. She shrugged and then took a sip of her own drink. "No, I'm not. I love meat. She is 100% vegan. I mean, she loves tofurkey and soy meat. Honestly, I don't understand how she lives on that tasteless food." There is something she has in common with my sister," Daniel said. She looked at him and raised an eyebrow. "The vegan thing. Actually, my sister is a vegetarian." "Is there a difference?" Erica asked. "Well, a vegetarian can have some animal products like milk and eggs, but a vegan abstains from all kind of animal products. I had to learn the difference when I met one of my sister's friends. I was kind of into her." "Ah," she said before she took another bite of her hot dog. "What?" he asked as he looked at her. She shook her head and shrugged. "Nothing, I just said ah, nothing more." "Well, I could have sworn I heard something in the ah." "Maybe there was," she said as she took another bite of her hot dog.
Oh no, this adult scene has been taken out and is exclusively available for Romancely Premium members. Check the description below to sign up. The love scene references Her Next Man's a Billionaire, Chapter 9, Love Scene 4.
"Erica." He started again before she pulled her hand away from him. She took another bite of her fries and looked at him as she took long sips of her drink. "So, What are we going to do after Caracas? She asked. Daniel knew what she was doing. She was trying to get his mind off everything so that he could at least walk back to the car. And you can't go to work this time. It is purely for fun, she said. Look at who cannot get enough of me. He looked at her and smiled. Erica felt her cheeks flush. She had just told him that she wanted to spend more time with him without even realizing it. Damn. She never thought she would feel this close, this attached to anyone. Unless, of course, you have to go back. She started before he leaned in and kissed her, silencing her. I want to be with you. Pick a destination and we're there, Daniel said in a whisper. I can't really decide between two places, equally rich in culture and scenery. She started. He raised an eyebrow and shrugged. Just say it, Erica, he said, as a few strands of her hair fell out of place. Erica was thinking of Athens and Morocco at the same time. She didn't know what she wanted between the two. Athens, she said without thinking. Good choice, he said as he pushed her hair behind her ear. She smiled at him and took another sip. She couldn't wait for her next adventure with Daniel. It was almost 8 in the evening when they finally got back to Daniel's suite. She didn't expect that they would be out that late. She looked at the time and wondered if it was an appropriate time to call Emily. Chances were she was still at the office anyway, and Cassandra would probably be at the bakery catering to the people who walked in for coffee after work. She sighed and sat on the edge of the bed as she composed a new email to her sister and Cassandra. She just couldn't wait to share the photos of Mount Avila. So what am I supposed to say without sounding like I'm trying to rub it in? She wondered as she started the email. Hey guys, check out how I spent my day. Miss you guys. XOXO. She smiled as she began uploading the photos to the email. She thought the one sentence was enough to express her excitement without making her sound like a jackass. She looked up at Daniel as he walked into the room just as the last photo uploaded. Talking to your peeps at home? Daniel asked. What the hell was that? She eyed him curiously. Trying to blend in with you and your culture, he said. She raised an eyebrow. Oh, you mean the fact that I'm black? Is that a bad thing? Don't ever do that again. Ever, she said with a smile as she looked at him. Well, you can't blame me for being excited that I have an African-American girlfriend, he shrugged. She looked up at him as her cheeks flushed. Girlfriend? What, too soon? He asked. She shook her head and opened her mouth to speak, but she had nothing. It was too soon, and after what had happened between him and Zoe and her and Eli, she didn't want to do anything that would see their whirlwind romance come to an end. Her gaze fell as she quickly clicked send on the email. He sat down next to her as she put her iPad aside. Erica, he called as he put his finger on her chin and lifted her face to her. I'm sorry, she started as she looked at him. I don't know what to say. Then don't say anything, he said as he looked at her. He placed a hand against her cheek and leaned in to kiss her. She closed her eyes and kissed him back. She felt his tongue seeking out hers as his other hand slowly went down her back. She pulled away and looked at him. There was a tingle going down her spine as he looked into her eyes. I guess someone is not into labeling, he said in a soft voice. It always ruins everything, she said. He touched the back of her neck and pulled her to him. Not this time, he said, before he kissed her forehead lovingly. She watched him as he looked into her eyes. He then got up and walked to the living room. She had a smile on her face as she climbed off the bed. She could not even wipe the grin off her face as she sat on the toilet to pee. Maybe he was right. Maybe labeling things was not such a bad idea. Have any ideas on what we should do later today? Dinner, maybe? She heard him call out from the living room. Maybe we should make travel plans first. I mean, we don't even know when we are leaving Caracas, she said as she flushed. Done and done. We will be on the 10 a.m. flight to Athens, Daniel said. He was now walking towards the bedroom. "And where'd you go?" "I wanted to get my reward for you loving the trip up the mountain," he said, as she looked at her reflection in the mirror. She tugged at her hair and undid the bun in her hair before she loosened the braid, letting her hair fall around her shoulders. "Coming," she said as she pulled her top off. She took off her pants and then her underwear before she tossed everything aside. "Give me just a few minutes," she said as she started the shower. She stepped into the running water and rolled her head up, letting the water fall on her face. She reached for the shower gel and squeezed a generous amount on her loofah. She was not sure whether she was taking extra long in the shower because she was scared that Daniel had just called her his girlfriend after a little under 2 weeks, or the fact that she was not sure what she was feeling. She was confused. When she finally got out of the shower, she toweled down and lotioned up before she put on a bathrobe. "Erica, need some help in there?" Daniel asked as she brushed her damp hair. She walked out of the bathroom and looked at him. "I'm here," she said as she looked at him. "You took a shower without me?" he asked, feigning hurt. She looked at him and gave him a sad smile. "The bathroom is right there. You could have very well just walked in," she said as she sat on the bed. "It's the VIP suite. The walls here are thicker than a fort," Daniel said as he looked at her. She shrugged and looked at her. "Okay, something's bugging you clearly," he said as he turned to look at her. She tried to force a smile, but she couldn't. She looked at him and shook her head. "Nothing's wrong." Daniel smiled and nodded knowingly. "It's the girlfriend thing, isn't it?" he said. She looked at him and opened her mouth to speak again, but she still couldn't bring herself to say anything. She had nothing to say. "You don't have to consider yourself my girlfriend if you are not ready for it. In fact, let's just stop talking about this altogether," he said as he held her hand in his. She looked at him and smiled. "That sounds good." She looked at him and smiled. "That's what I love to hear," he said as he put his hand under her damp hair. "Now come down here and let me have you," he added as he brought her head down and kissed her deeply.
Oh no, this adult scene has been taken out and is exclusively available for Romance Premium members. Check the description below to sign up. The love scene references Her Next Man's a Billionaire, Chapter 9, Love Scene 5.
Chapter 10. To say that Erica was excited as she and Daniel left Caracas for Athens would have been a gross understatement. The truth was that she was ecstatic. She could not wait to be in a new place with Daniel. She suddenly wanted to pinch herself. Every time she thought about how happy she was with him, she wanted to pinch herself. She didn't like the fact that she liked him a bit too much. What about him drives me so damn wild? She wondered as she looked at a sleeping Daniel. They were a couple of hours away from Athens, and after almost 13 hours of flying, Daniel had given in to his primal need and snoozed off. What about him is so different? What makes me so crazy and so scared of having him in my life? She was not sure about anything anymore. Actually, what she was feeling was what her sister would define as being in love. She shook her head at the thought. All she knew was the fact that she was confused, a lot. She reached for the iPad she had stashed in the seat pocket and sighed. She needed to get everything she was feeling out. And the best way she knew how, the only way she knew how, was to write. She needed to write. For years, that was the only thing she could do that could actually ensure that she kept herself sane. She sighed when she remembered her detachable keyboard was in the luggage compartment above. She unbuckled her seatbelt and stood up slowly, careful not to wake Daniel. She pulled her bag from the luggage compartment before she got her keyboard. She put the bag back in the compartment and sat down wondering how she would start her entry. She looked at Daniel again as she sat down and sighed. Just like journalism club back in college, just put your thoughts down, she thought as she opened a new document. She looked at the screen and attached the keyboard, making a small computer from the two gadgets. Just put down your thoughts, my thoughts. What do I think about Daniel Reese? She was now drumming her fingers against the sides of her screen. 2 weeks ago, I met the one good man who... She stopped and read the line she had just typed. That just sounds corny, she thought as she erased it. She didn't know whether to be real or poetic. She wanted to express the confusion she felt, the crazy weird things she had going in her head, in her heart. She was just about to begin typing when a flight attendant passed by checking if everyone had their seatbelts on. She had been too engrossed in what she was doing that she had not noticed the seatbelt signal come on. She quickly buckled herself in and sighed. She found herself picturing the office back when she was doing mediation. She would tell her clients to look at each other and speak from the heart. Maybe that was exactly what she needed to do. Look at Daniel and speak from the heart. She turned and looked at Daniel. She could not help but smile when she looked at him. He had beautiful long eyelashes that made her conclude that he would father some beautiful girls someday. The 3 stray hairs that usually fell out of place shielding his eyes were at it again. She looked at him, and suddenly it all dawned on her what she wanted to say. They say that all good men are either married or gay. Well, as it turns out, I may have just met the one good man who isn't married, gay, or held down by anyone. He is a gentleman, and he is good-looking, and I know the one question I should be asking myself is, what is wrong with him, right? Well, I have been asking myself the same question for the last 2 weeks. Every time I look at him, I feel like there is something I am missing, something I am not seeing. Or is it that I am too infatuated with his perfect, gentlemanly personality that I cannot see what is right in front of me? She looked at Daniel again and smiled. Or is it that the universe is finally giving me something rather than taking something away? I could very well be falling for him and I don't even realize it, or I realize it and I am afraid of what I might be getting myself into. Eli was the same at first. Sweet, nice, and loving, and then he suddenly became this lying, cheating bastard. I gave him everything. My heart, my love, my all, and he swung shit at me. I'm scared of giving in to what I am feeling. What if I give in to everything and then I end up in the same position I was in with Eli? What if I admit that I have feelings for him and he hurts me? I can't take another heartbreak. She didn't know how she had gone from writing about Daniel and how he made her happy to Daniel and his potential to hurt her. She couldn't let this happen. Not again. She looked at him and slipped her hand into his, making him stir a little. She leaned back against the seat and rolled her head to the side as his eyelids fluttered open. "Hey there," he said in a low voice. She smiled at him. "Hey," she said in a whisper. "Sleep okay?" "As well as I could manage," he said with a smile. He turned on the plane navigation and smiled. "We're almost there," he said as he looked out the window. She nodded and turned off her iPad before she detached the keyboard and stashed it in the seat pocket. "What? The in-flight entertainment wasn't good enough?" he asked. "Kind of. I just needed to make a journal entry," she said. "You journal?" he asked, raising an eyebrow at her. "What is that supposed to mean? You made it sound like it was such a big idea. In a bad way." She frowned. He shook his head and straightened his back against the seat. "No, what I meant was that you don't look like the kind to journal. You look like a shooting range kind of person. There is a lot you are yet to find out about me," she said. "But you are not so far off as far as the shooting range is concerned." Daniel's eyes lit up. "So I was right about that? You like guns?" "Actually, Emily is more of the shooting range kind of girl. She actually has a gun collection. Beats me why she needs a collection of firearms," she said. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "You are kidding, right? I mean, you are familiar with the Second Amendment, right?" "Yes, I am, but she has a collection. Almost 3, she said, matter-of-factly making Daniel laugh. "What? What's so funny?" she asked as he looked at him. "Well, when you said collection, I was picturing something like this," he said as he reached for his phone from his pocket. She waited as he scrolled through the pictures to show her a photo of a room literally lined with firearms. "Whoa," Erica said under her breath. Why the hell would you even need so many of these anyway? She asked as she looked at the guns. Well, I like to consider myself an enthusiast, really. See that? He asked as he pointed at one of the firearms on the wall. It looked old school. If she didn't know any better, she would have thought it to have been used in the Civil War. That's a .73 cal pistol. It was used in the American Civil War, he said. She smiled in satisfaction. At least she was not completely oblivious as far as firearms were concerned. That's definitely a beaut, I can say that for sure, she said as she double-tapped on the screen to enlarge the photo. I'll make a gun enthusiast out of you, Hayes, he said as he looked into her eyes. I have been dodging my sister on that for most of my adult life. I'm not sure how successful you are going to be in that, she said, just as the captain announced over the system that the passengers should prepare for landing. I don't know about that, he said with a smile. If you had told me a month ago that I would be traveling the world with a woman who would take my heart captive, I would have most probably laughed in your face. So you coming to see the other side of firearms like I do is definitely a possibility, he said as he lifted the window blind as per the flight regulations. She looked at him and raised an eyebrow. Take your heart captive? Really? Out of all that, that's all you got? I can't help it if some words you speak totally catch me off guard, she shrugged. You almost sound like an actor on some Shakespearean play or something. He looked at her and took one of her hands in his. Guess that's the effect you have on me, he said before he looked out the window. Say hello to Greece, he said with a smile. She looked out the window and a smile played on her lips. The perfect blue of the water and the white of the buildings was more than enough to send a warm tingle down her spine. The small specks of luscious green vegetation was a welcome sight contrasting the white and blue. She was going to love her time here. She was going to cherish her time here. I have always wanted to ask. Erica started when they had booked themselves in at the hotel. Daniel looked at her and laughed. Now what? Erica asked, rolling her eyes. Nothing, he said, shaking his head as he walked towards her. Erica sat on the bed and crossed her arms over her chest, feigning a frown. You just laughed at me and you are telling me that it's nothing? There is definitely something, she said, moving back on the bed so she could rest her back on the headboard. Fine, I'm laughing at what you said, not at you, Daniel said. What did I just say? She asked, looking at him. You just said you've always wanted to ask me, like you've known me since college or something, he said, joining her on the bed. She smiled as he draped an arm around her shoulders. Well, maybe it feels like I have known you since way back then. And even if I did, what's the biggie? She asked. Daniel shook his head and planted a kiss on her forehead. No biggie. So what have you always wanted to ask me, Miss Hayes? Why are you on this long vacation? Have you grown tired of me already? He asked, looking into her eyes. She smiled and playfully punched his arm. Oh, silly. It's just... Her voice trailed off when she realized that there was no polite way of asking what she was about to ask. It seems like you are in no hurry to get back home, considering that by the time I met you, you'd already been MIA from your daily routine for almost a month, she said. He looked down at her and took a long, deep breath. It's a long story. At the risk of sounding cliched, I've got nothing but time, she said. Unless, of course, you don't want to talk about it, she added quickly. Daniel shook his head and ran his fingers through his hair. Erica could tell that she had pushed the wrong button. Maybe I shouldn't have pushed it, she thought. Wait, did you take off because of what happened with Zoe? Not exactly, but it had a lot to do with her, he sighed. Daniel was breathing hard as he looked at the company's quarterlies. There were certain days in the year he hated, and this was slowly turning out to be one of them. As far as he was concerned, the company should have been making profits, and not just mere profits, but a shitload of profits. And judging by the financial report he had in his hand, QKM was in the hole, a very dark financial hole. He ran his fingers through his hair and loosened his tie before he slammed the report on his desk. He leaned forward and ran his finger on the edge of the telephone before he finally pressed the intercom button. "Susie, get me Procter & Wells, now!" He was yelling, even though he never meant to. He walked over to his minibar and poured himself a whiskey, neat. He flashed down the contents of the glass before he poured himself another glass. He had just put the bottle back down when he heard a knock on the door. He walked back to his desk as Micah Proctor and Spencer Wells walked into his office. "You wanted to see us, Mr. Reese?" Spencer asked. "Yeah, I did. Come on in, guys, and explain what the hell those financials mean," he said as he put the file in front of the two men from the accounting office. He took a seat and ran his finger around the rim of the glass. He could feel his heart beating hard in his chest, and he knew that after years of working with his team, Procter & Wells knew exactly what he was thinking. "Well," Daniel pressed as he took a sip of his drink. He had no idea what kind of shitstorm his question was about to raise. He looked at the two and wondered what kind of lies the two would cook up. "Well, to be honest, Mr. Reese," Spencer started, "we've been looking into getting more turnover." Daniel looked at them and shook his head. That sounded like good news, but the way Spencer was talking made him think that there was something more.
"We might have made the wrong choices as far as stocks are concerned," he said.
Daniel rubbed his temple and took another sip of his drink. He could not believe what he was hearing. "And whose idea was this exactly?" he asked. Wells and Proctor exchanged a knowing glance. "Well, it may have come right from the top," Proctor said. "What do you mean right from the top? Did my father do this?" Daniel asked as he looked at the two of them. He noticed the knowing look between his two accounting guys and rubbed his temple again. "Guys, if there is anything I need to know, I would like to know right now," he said. "Patrick Reese," Spencer said after a long silence. Daniel took a long, deep breath. Patrick was his uncle and his father's younger brother. When Daniel took the reins at QKM, he was one of the most vocal people against the move. As far as he was concerned, he was next in line, and Daniel taking over as CEO only meant one thing, that he had been robbed of his birthright. "What the hell? He doesn't have a say in this, not in the very least." Daniel was annoyed. He was sure that this was a way for his uncle to undermine his leadership. He'd been doing it ever since his father named him successor, and even then, Daniel knew that there would never be a time when his uncle's idiocy got to him, but somehow it did. He flashed down the contents of his glass and closed his eyes tightly as he felt the whiskey burning its way down his throat. "We tried everything we could, but we had no idea how we were supposed to approach any of this. There was too much at risk." Proctor was now talking. "What do you mean? What kind of risk are you talking about?" he asked, confused. Proctor and Wells looked at each other again. "Did you know that Zoe Willoughby bought him out of QKM?" Proctor asked. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "What?" he asked in surprise. "Zoe Willoughby, as in my ex, Zoe Willoughby? That Zoe?" he asked. Proctor nodded. Daniel knew what this meant. "Wait, when did Zoe Willoughby get QKM stock? Why wasn't I in the loop?" Daniel asked, more confused than ever. He knew one thing for sure. If Zoe got her hands on his company's stock, then she must have had an ulterior motive. She was never one to do things just for the sake of doing them. "Honestly, Mr. Reese, we didn't think much of it until now," Proctor said. "Yeah, and we have never had reason to question the motive of any new stockholder. To us, it was just another investment," Spencer said. "But Uncle Patrick is still on the board," he said matter-of-factly. Normally, if a member or the board sold off his shares, then he had to give up his seat on the board. There was no logic to a board member sitting in on meetings in a company he had no business with. "Yes, he is, but if I could speak freely, sir, I would say that Patrick Reese is Miss Willoughby's proxy," Spencer said. "Proxy for what?" he asked as he looked at them. "And why the hell hasn't this ever come up?" Daniel asked. This had to be the best-kept secret next to Area 51. When no one questioned the change, we thought it was some high-level shit. We were not about to step in something we were not welcomed in. "Excuse my French, sir," Proctor said. But there is no way my uncle would just hand over his shares without a fight. There is something more to this than meets the eye, he said, a faraway look in his eye. Spencer looked at Proctor and shrugged. I mean, he did fight tooth and nail to get his hands on that stock after all, Daniel added as he looked at the two guys who he had once considered his A-team. There was something off and he could feel it in his bones. He rubbed his brow with his index finger and sighed. Get me the company's financials going back 2 years. There is something more to this, stock handover, and I am going to get to the bottom of it, he said as he leaned back in his chair. Proctor and Wells looked at each other and nodded before they got up. Hey guys, I need that report ASAP, he said. I'll have it back here in 10, Proctor said before the two walked out. Daniel took a long, deep breath as he looked at his phone. He had half a mind to call both his uncle and Zoe. He needed to know what the hell those two were up to. He had a sick feeling about all this. There was no way that his two least favorite people working together was a coincidence. There was something more to it, and he was going to find out. He was not sure how long he had been staring at his phone when Proctor finally came through. Something's a little off, boss, he said when he placed the report on the desk. Why? Daniel asked as he grabbed the file off his desk. Proctor shook his head. The accounts guy was a little reluctant. Matter of fact, he only did it because I dropped your name, he said. Daniel looked at him and raised an eyebrow before he flipped through the pages. This was going to take a while. He looked at Proctor and smiled. Thanks, Proctor. I'll take a look at this and get back to you, he said as he put the file back on the table. Don't mention it, boss, Proctor said before he started walking towards the door. Proctor, at the risk of sounding like a CIA agent, this is strictly need to know, and I determine who needs to know, Daniel said. Proctor smiled and nodded. Make sure Spencer knows that too, he added before Proctor walked out of his office. He looked at the report and sighed before he picked up his phone. He dialed 2 and pressed call. Julian, how are you doing? He said when his private forensic accountant picked up. Good, but I'm guessing that is not the case for you, Julian said. Daniel smiled and nodded as if Julian could see him. Saw right through this call, didn't you? Yes, I did. So what's going on? Julian asked. Well, I need to see you. Can we meet somewhere? I don't think I should be discussing this over the phone, Daniel said. How about we do coffee in 10? Sure. Same place? Julian asked. Same place, Daniel said before hanging up. Something was up and he was going to get to the bottom of whatever the hell Zoe and Patrick were up to. After his meeting with Julian, Daniel was more rattled than he had ever been. He could not wait to look his uncle and Zoe in the eye when he called them on their bluff. This was a new low even for them. His heart was beating hard in his chest as he slowly walked into the boardroom. His father looked up at him and smiled. Daniel, are you going to tell me why we are here? He asked as Daniel sat down. Give it a minute, Dad, Daniel said, smiling at him. Ray looked at his son and shrugged. He'd been out of the QKM mainstream business for a while, and board meetings were the only time he showed up at the company. And now, for this thing his son had called him in for. Right on time, Daniel said under his breath as Zoe walked into the boardroom, followed by Patrick. Ray raised an eyebrow. Pat? Zoe? What the hell is going on? Daniel looked at the two and then at his father. Always good to see you, Ray. Retirement suits you. You look really good, she said with a smile. Daniel, Zoe added in a sarcastic tone. Thanks, Zoe. Good to see you too. What's going on? Ray asked as he looked at the two of them. Daniel stood up and passed copies of the report he had in his hand. What's this? He asked. Those are the company's financials for the last year, Daniel said. Ray raised an eyebrow and shook his head. What the hell? We are losing thousands daily. Zoe tossed the file on the table and shook her head. Is this why you called us in here? To tell us what we all know? She asked. Hold on there. I did not know we were incurring this much in losses, Ray said. That is not what I meant, Ray. All I meant was that businesses make losses, she said matter-of-factly. Yes, Daniel, that is why there are balance sheets with profits and loss accounts, Patrick said. Daniel shook his head. That's not the point. Look at page 2 of the report. It clearly states that we have all the raw materials needed for the next 6 months. Yet Uncle Patrick signed the release to procure more materials, Daniel said. Ray looked at his brother and shook his head. Pat, what the hell? Ray, I can explain. Patrick started before Daniel held up a finger. And Uncle Patrick sold off his shares to Zoe, he said. He could tell by the way Zoe's eyes grew wide that he had taken her by surprise. She looked at Patrick and then at Ray. Now, Ray. Zoe started before Patrick also spoke up. I can explain this, Ray, he said. Why didn't you tell me that you wanted to sell your shares after badgering me that much? Ray asked as he looked at his brother. Patrick shrugged. I needed money, Ray. You are a shareholder at a Fortune 500. How much money could you possibly have needed? Ray asked. Dad, that's not why I called us here. Our newest product has a number of tweaks, just a way to give us an edge in the market, Daniel said as he switched on the projector. This is our model. And this, he paused as he changed the slides. That's our lead competitor's newest model, he added. That's the same microwave we have in our line, inside and out, Ray said. He looked at his son and shook his head. Why on earth does our lead competitor have the very same product we have? Doesn't our R&D department put enough into their work, or what the hell is going on? He asked. I hired a forensic accountant to find out why we were having these losses, and apart from finding out what Uncle Patrick was doing, he also traced a money trail back to Zoe, Daniel explained. From the way Zoe's nostrils were flaring rapidly, he could tell that she was nervous. A trail that led right up to Kitchen Depot. Zoe has been leaking our R&D designs to our competitor, he added. Ray looked at Zoe and then at Patrick. You knew this was happening and you never said a word to me? He asked. Ray, listen, Patrick started. According to the company bylaws, any board member who defies the confidentiality clause has to walk away from the table, and his shares are sold to the other shareholders at half price, Daniel said. Wait, what? Zoe asked in surprise. Hey, that's not fair, Patrick started, but Ray was already on his feet. I want you out of the building right now, he said to Patrick through gritted teeth. Ray, you have to give me a chance to explain everything, Patrick said as he looked at his brother. Do I have to call security? Ray asked. Listen, Ray, Zoe started. You too. And if you know what's good for you, you will not contest this, otherwise I will take you for everything you have, Ray said, surprising everyone, including himself. He had always had a soft spot for Zoe, but the way she was acting right now, he didn't have any heart left for her. Ray looked at Zoe and Patrick as they walked out of the door before he sat back down. We need to do some major damage control, he said, looking at Daniel. Get everything under control and get the mole out of the R&D department. We need to start over, he said. I'm on it, Daniel said as he picked up his laptop and walked out of the boardroom, leaving his father seated there wondering how his bother could have double-crossed him like that. Good move, Danny, he heard Zoe's voice when he walked out of the boardroom. He turned to his side and saw her leaning against the wall. She looked at him and flashed him a smile that would have once melted his heart. Why the hell are you trying to run me down, Zoe? What were you thinking? He asked as he looked at her. You really don't know? She asked as she pushed a curl of her red hair behind her ear. No, I really don't, Daniel said as he looked at her. You fucking left me, she hissed. I don't have the time for this, he said as he walked down the hall to his office. You have to talk to me, Danny, she said as she walked quickly after him. She followed him right past his assistant and slammed the door when they were both inside. It's been long enough, she said as she looked at him. All I need to know is why you are trying to ruin my father's legacy, he said, looking into her once warm eyes. You hurt me, Danny. You just left me without giving me a chance to explain. She started before he laughed cynically. What was there to explain? We were supposed to get married and you cheated on me, he said. I deserve better, he added as he walked to his desk. You don't even care what made me do what I did? She asked. Daniel looked up at her in surprise. What? You actually have a reason for your infidelity? It was more of a statement than a question. You were never around, always working, and he... Her voice trailed off. She looked at him and he shook his head in disbelief. So what? You thought you'd get back at me by running the company my father struggled to build to the ground, is that it? Your big revenge plan? He asked. I actually wanted to control the majority of the company. I still do, she said. Why? Is that some crazy plan of yours to own me in some way? He asked. He laughed cynically when she didn't answer. That had been her plan all along. He looked at her and shook his head. Get out, he said as he picked up the phone. Annalise, get security up here right now. Zoe looked at him and shook her head. Come on, Danny, we were supposed to be the power couple to run QKM together? She asked. That was before you opened your legs to another man, he said in a low voice. She looked at him and began walking towards his desk slowly as she took off her coat. What the hell are you doing? He asked when she dropped her coat to the floor. Showing you what you are missing out on? She said in a low voice as she undid the buttons on her blouse. Daniel picked up the phone again. Annalise, he said in a warning tone. They're on their way, his assistant said in a soft voice. Zoe was already taking off her shirt. I don't want any of this, Zoe. I'm done with you. I have been for a long time, he said. She shook her head and kicked off her shoes just as security barged in. We are fine in here, aren't we, Danny? Zoe said with a smile. Mr. Reese? One of the security men said as he looked at Daniel. Get her out of here, Daniel said as he looked at the two security men. Erica looked at him and shook her head. She really didn't know what she was supposed to say. Daniel's story sounded like some well-scripted TV show, to say the least. She was still having a hard time processing everything that Daniel had just said. So, as you can see, I am in no hurry to get back home. There's nothing for me back there anyway, he said. Don't say that. You have an entire business empire to run, she said. It's running quite well without me. And if I have to be there for business to run, then I have failed my father and my father's father and his father before that. Well, you get the drill, Daniel said. Erica laughed and nodded before she rested her head on his chest. She could not help but feel sorry for him after hearing all that. So she really wanted to clean you out? Erica asked. Honestly, I don't know whether she wanted to own the company or just get it shut down. I mean, if she wanted to run it so much, why the hell was she giving leverage to the competitor? Daniel wondered. So that's why you decided to go to Mexico? Erica asked. Well, I needed a fresh start and I needed a breather from the whole corporate field after that fight with those two clowns, he said. I hope you got it, Erica said in a soft voice. Daniel raised her chin and planted a soft kiss on her lips. In more ways than one, he said in a soft voice.
Chapter 11. After Erica and Daniel had their long heart-to-heart, they fell asleep in each other's arms, probably sleeping off the fatigue of the long flight. The loud vibrating of her phone is what woke both of them up. Is that mine or yours? Daniel asked. She opened her eyes and rolled her head to the side to see her phone lighting up on the nightstand. She sighed. It's mine, she said as she reached for the phone. She looked at the screen and then rubbed her eyes. M? What the? She muttered as she picked up the phone. Hello? Emily? What's going on? Get to a computer or an iPad or just Skype your phone right the fuck now, Emily was yelling. Are you okay? Erica asked. Please just get on Skype. I need to vent, Emily said. Now? Erica asked. It was 11 in the morning, which meant that it was probably 3 or 4 in the morning back at home. Yes, now. I wouldn't be calling if I wanted to talk tomorrow, now would I? Emily was clearly not having a very good day. Erica shrugged and rolled her eyes. You better not have rolled your eyes at me, Emily said. Erica wanted to scream. It was like she was right there. I didn't, Erica whispered loudly. I'll call you in a minute, she said before hanging up. Daniel looked at her and caressed her leg gently. Everything okay? He asked. Yeah, it's just my sister. I need to Skype her, Erica said as she climbed off the bed. She walked to where her luggage was and pulled her iPad out. She then walked back to the bed as she switched it on. Do you know what the Wi-Fi password is? She asked as she sat on the bed. Daniel stirred. It was on the care package we got from reception, he said. Where is the care package? She asked. Daniel's eyes fluttered open as she looked around the suite. She spotted the care package on his suitcase. Never mind, she said as she climbed off the bed. She walked over to his suitcase and pulled out a flyer. She quickly looked through it before she keyed in the password and then placed the call to her sister. Okay, Em, what the fuck? She asked as she sat down in the couch. Well, I was looking at the... Emily started before Erica squinted. Wait, are you still at the office? She asked. Emily put her hands up and rolled her eyes. Will you just listen to me for a second and know this is my living room floor? I've been working from home since I got home from work 5 hours ago, she said. 5 hours ago? Erica asked. Yes, I got home at 11, Emily said as she sat on the floor. So anyway, I just lost everything, Erica. Every fucking thing, she said. Erica wanted to ask what her sister was talking about, but she knew better than to interrupt her sister when she was on an emotional roller coaster. She looked at her sister and leaned back on the couch, waiting to hear what Emily had to say. One of my clients, Perkins Inc., she started. The cosmetologists? Erica asked. Yes, the cosmetologists. They have ruined me officially, she said. Will you just tell me what the hell happened? Erica asked. Well, as it so turns out, the CFO has been stealing from the company whose account I have been managing, she said. Erica raised an eyebrow. That's not good, she said. I know, and I have been looking through every last document I have trying to make sure I clear my name, and I finally did it. I have totally cleared my name and everything, Emily said. Then what is the big deal? Erica asked, a little confused. My boss actually thought I had a hand in all this. He gave me a suspension letter pending investigation. The company I have devoted my time to for 3 years thought I was in on a felony. Emily was a mess. Erica could see it in the way she was talking. So you cleared your name, right? What's the big deal? The suspension should be lifted any day now, Erica said. Emily shook her head. I won't, she said. I emailed my boss my resignation before I called you. You what? Erica asked. I cannot work for a person who can't believe in me, Erica, Emily said as she looked at her sister. Holy shit, Erica, what the hell did I do? She asked after taking a long pause. You stood up for what you believe in, Erica said with a smile. She noticed a tear rolling down her sister's cheek. Hey, no, don't do that, she said, wishing she could be next to Emily so she could give her a hug. I'm just not sure what I'm supposed to do next. Word of my resignation has already hit the other firms, and now my stupid email won't stop buzzing, and I can't. I can't do this right now. I just can't. Erica took a long, deep breath just as Daniel was walking into the room. Everything okay? He asked. My sister is having a meltdown. She quit her job, Erica said in a whisper, even though Emily heard her. Who are you talking to? Emily asked. Daniel leaned over in the iPad camera's line of sight. Hey, I'm Daniel, he said with a smile, giving a little wave. Emily brushed off her tears. "Hey, sorry, I'm a mess," she said, as she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "It's fine. I want to make a call, get us some food. Any preference?" he asked. "Surprise me," she said. Daniel smiled and walked over to the phone. "Okay, he is hot. 4,000,000 times hotter than that stupid freak Eli," Emily said. Erica smiled and shook her head. "Shut up," she whispered. "What? He is, have you looked at him?" Emily asked. "I have slept with him, so I know exactly what I am talking about," she said in a whisper. Emily laughed. "Good. At least you are smiling now." "I guess I needed that," Emily said. "I think I need a breather, or something," she added, as Daniel walked back to where Erica was and mouthed, "I'm going for a shower," before he blew her a kiss. Erica smiled and felt her cheeks flush a bright crimson. "Why the hell are you blushing?" she asked. Erica's smile disappeared almost as soon as it appeared. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, as she straightened herself up. "Listen, do this. Get some rest, sleep in, and I'll call Cassandra and have her check in on you, okay? Just take it easy, sweetie," she said. Emily nodded and sighed. "I love you," Erica said. She had said those words so many times before, but this time she felt like they had so much more weight. "I love you too," Emily said. Erica smiled as she hung up. She put the iPad aside and held the side of her head before she stood up and walked to the bedroom. She was slowly taking off her clothes as she walked into the bedroom area of the suite. When she finally took off her panties, she walked into the bathroom, and Daniel turned around to look at her. He held his hand out, and she gently placed her small hand in his. "Are you okay?" he asked, as he wrapped his arms around her. She wanted to nod, but she found herself shaking her head. "Want to talk about it?" She brushed the wet hair away from her face and sighed. "What happened anyway?" "It's a long story. Something about her workplace, former workplace, and CFOs stealing company funds. I just don't know how all that happened to her," Erica said. "And I have always been with my sister. Well, I don't live with her, but she has always been close to me and everything, but now she needs me and I am in freaking Athens," she said sadly. Daniel turned her around and looked into her eyes. "Tell me what you want," he said as he looked into her eyes. "I don't want to leave, but I also don't want to stay here knowing that she is wallowing in her own self-pity. She tends to do that," she said. "We could bring her over here?" "What do you mean? She is not like some luggage we can just haul over or anything." "Maybe she would actually like it." "She wouldn't like it. She would love it." "Then that's settled then. Unless, of course, you don't want her here." She shook her head. No, I'd love to have her here." "Well, maybe a few days out here could really do her some good," Daniel said. He looked at her and she nodded. "It will definitely make her forget all about some weird people trying to ruin her. It worked for me, didn't it?" he asked. "Guess you're right," she said, before she grabbed the shower gel from the rack and handed it to him. "Now, you get to caress my wet, soapy body after you get this all over me," she said in a soft voice. Daniel felt his cock get hard just by the way she had said those words. "And no, you can't have me yet," she added as she turned around, presenting her ass to him. "That is not helping at all," Daniel said as he felt his cock pressing into her ass. She smiled and reached for his ass. "Or that," he said, closing his eyes. "I know, and I love it," Erica said softly.
Chapter 12. Needless to say, Emily was over the moon when Erica told her that she would be joining them in Athens for a mini holiday. God knows that was all she needed after the week she'd had. When Erica and Daniel picked her up from the airport, she could not help but stare at Daniel. "Emily Miranda Hayes," Erica said in a loud whisper. "What?" Emily asked, turning her attention to her sister. "You are staring. It's rude," Erica whispered. Daniel smiled. So I'm thinking you are whispering because you don't want me to hear what you're saying? He said as he looked at Erica, who turned her attention to him. You heard all that? She asked. Daniel smiled and turned his attention back on the road, nodding. Clearly, she doesn't want you to see just how much she is into you, Emily said, leaning forward to get a better look at Daniel. As if you are not already close enough, was what Erica was thinking as she turned her attention to look at the road. I will throw you out of this car, Em, if you don't shut the hell up, she said. Erica, always the uptight one, Emily said. Daniel was trying hard not to laugh. I can see the clear difference between you two. I told you, just because we are twins, it doesn't mean that we are anything alike, Erica said. Thank God, Emily said, laughing. So, Emily, how was your flight? Daniel asked in an attempt to change the subject. Long but generally pleasant. These Arabian Airlines are really upping their game. I mean, even the food is top of the range, Emily said. Erica smiled and turned around to look at her sister. What, you actually liked the food they served on the plane? It was amazing. We had this absolutely awesome chicken and potato for lunch. Emily sighed dramatically. I have never had something so spicy and delicious at the same time. Who knew? Maybe I am done with American Airlines for good, she added with a smile. I know exactly what you're talking about. I flew with Qatar Airways once. I had to get one of their chefs on my personal bandwagon, Daniel said. Wait, you have your own plane? This one's a keeper, Erica. We can have a way to chauffeur our kids around, Emily said. Daniel laughed and shook his head. The company has a jet. I just like knowing that I can have the same quality food I had back there, he said. What did you fly with? Eddie had, Emily said. Erica raised an eyebrow. What happened to Virgin Atlantic till I die? That was the earliest flight out of the States. The only other flight earlier than that would have kept me waiting for 12 hours, and it would have taken me through 3 stopovers. For a 13-hour journey? That wasn't worth it, Emily said. So you are here for 5 days. What do you have in mind? Erica asked as Daniel pulled over in front of the hotel. The Herodotus? This is where you are staying? Emily asked as the valet walked over to the car and opened the car door for her. She stepped out and looked at the big, beautiful building. It's like the Greek Burj Khalifa, she whispered to herself as Daniel spoke to a bellboy. Erica walked round to where she was and took her sister's hand in hers. Come on, she said as she led them in. Seriously, what does this guy do? I mean, he did pay for my flight here and my stay. Emily suddenly stopped when they got to the elevator. Is he a drug dealer? Please tell me he isn't, she said in a whisper. I have better judgment than that. Give me some credit, Erica said. Emily frowned and shook her head. Considering the kind of ex you have. She never got a chance to finish her statement because Erica was staring daggers at her. She smiled and shrugged. Fine. So he isn't a drug dealer, she said as Daniel walked up to them. I'm sorry. I had to make sure everything was in order for your suite, he said as they stepped into the elevator. Emily raised an eyebrow. Suite? She asked. Erica looked at her and nodded. Business class hotel suites. I haven't binged like this since the company sent me out to that conference in Vegas last year, she said as they rode to her floor. Well, Erica didn't tell me much, but from the little she did, I think you deserve it, Daniel said with a smile. Emily looked at him and shook her head dreamily. Please tell me you have a brother, cousin, anything. I have a sister and a few cousins. Most of them are married, though, Daniel said. Emily rolled her eyes and Erica laughed. Of course they are. The good ones are always taken, Emily said. Daniel took Erica's hands and shrugged. I don't know. I thought so too until I met your sister, he said with a smile as the elevator doors opened. So, this is you, Daniel said, as he led them to a suite down the hall. It was just 3 doors down from their room. This is so gorgeous. Emily said when she walked into her suites. It was not as big as Erica and Daniel's, Erica noticed, but it was still so much bigger than the standard room. They were still checking out the room when the bellboy came up with Emily's bags. "We'll leave you to freshen up. I'm sure after 13 hours you need some rest," Daniel said. Erica gave her sister a quick hug. "Remember, 3 doors down," she said. Emily smiled and then laughed. "I know, I heard it too. Exactly like the band." "So we are going to be having dinner in an hour or so, but if you're tired," Daniel started before Emily shook her head. "I have the rest of the evening to sleep off the fatigue. Besides, I am 7 hours off my schedule," Emily said. Erica raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure?" "Yes, I want to hear all about the new guy and what he is about," Emily said with a smile. "Awesome. Then we'll see you in around 57 minutes, Daniel said as he looked at his watch. He then slipped an arm around Erica's waist and led her to their suite. "Your sister is something else," he said when they walked into the room. "I know, right?" Erica asked. "But I can't wait to get to know her more. She seems exciting," he said as he grabbed an apple off the fruit basket on the table. "I can now see the whole gun thing," he said before he bit into the apple. She sat down next to him and rested her head on his shoulder. "So we are now meeting family, huh? Are you scared?" she asked. Daniel took another bite and looked down at her. "Not at all. Your sister is awesome. Maybe you should meet my sister just to even out the playing field," he said. She laughed and got up before she walked to the bathroom. She splashed some water on her face and then dabbed her face with a towel. She then decided to take a full-on shower. After all, Daniel had this whole thing about dressing up for dinner and she was starting to like it. Plus, she couldn't wait to put on her new blue silk dress that Daniel had got her while they were still in Caracas. After her shower, she lotioned up and then put on the dress and coupled it with a pair of black peep-toe heels. She then put on her makeup and let her hair down. She loved how she looked, but when she walked to where Daniel was, his heart almost skipped a beat. He looked at her and shut his laptop before he stood up. "You look, whoa," he said, looking at her. She looked at him and smiled. "Thank you," she said. "And you are not dressed." He got up and slowly walked towards her. He was fighting everything inside his body because at that moment all he wanted to do was just screw her brains out while she was still in that dress. "After seeing you, I don't really want to get dressed anymore," he said as he looked at her. "We are supposed to be having dinner in 30 minutes, and my sister—" Erica started before he smiled at her and shrugged. "Let her be. You did point out that we do have 30 minutes. He looked at her and smiled. "And I get to have more time to look at you," he said in a soft voice as he looked at the short silky dress she had on. She was almost calling out to him to tear her clothes off. It was short, showing off her perfectly long legs. "So what are we supposed to be doing now?" she asked. "We could watch a movie," he said. She shrugged and walked over to the refrigerator. "So that's a yes on the movie?" he asked. "Sure," Erica said as she took a look in the fridge. "How could you not tell me about this pâté sitting here?" she asked as she took a bakery box out of the fridge. "Oh, that was supposed to be for dessert later," Daniel said as she walked to where he was. "Dessert with you, alone," he added in a low voice. She handed him a fork and smiled. "You could always have your dessert before dinner," she said. Daniel looked at her and then at the box. "I'm a bit confused," he said as he looked at her. She opened the box and looked at the frosted treat inside. "Are we talking of the confectionery or you?" he wondered as he looked at her. She flashed him a seductive smile. "Just start with the cake, and then have your other dessert," she said as she scooped some frosting with her finger. "The person who came up with this is a genius," he said after taking the first bite. "What? The whole cake meets pie? It's the same as a cronut," she said as she looked at him. "Maybe it's just good old American greed," she added. He took a bite and raised an eyebrow. Good old American greed? Well, someone wants a donut and a croissant, so they make it into one. Another one wants a cake and a pie, so they decide to put the batter onto dough and bake it, she said as she looked at him. Don't you see it? She asked. Daniel smiled and took a bite before he fed some to her. I love how you have these little explanations for everything, he said. Well, I did practice law for some time. Stalling is a tactic you learn, she said. Daniel raised an eyebrow again. Are you stalling right now? What do you think? She asked. He was about to answer when the loud ringing of his phone interrupted the moment. She looked at him, scooped some more frosting as he hit ignore. Hey, you can answer that, you know, she said. He shook his head and switched off his phone. He looked rattled. Actually, I'd rather not, he said. She touched his arm in concern. You really can, it's no prob. Erica, I said I don't want to answer it, so quit it, he suddenly said in a louder voice than he intended. She looked at him surprised. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you, she said as she started walking away. Daniel took a long, deep breath and pulled her back to him. Erica, I'm sorry, he said as he looked at her. She shook her head. She had never thought his dark side would be this, well, dark. Baby, he said as he looked at her. Talk to me. Who was that? She asked as she looked at him. I don't think you really want to know, he said. Fine, whatever, she said as she tried pulling away from him. It was Zoe, he said when he noticed that she was hell-bent on getting away. That was Zoe, and I don't know how she got my number, he added. She didn't know what she was supposed to say. I can't, I just don't. She started before he pressed a finger on her lips. She looked at him and opened her mouth to speak. Zoe makes me angry. I mean, the very thought of her just drives me insane, he said as he pulled her to his body. She looked at him and shrugged. I think there is that one person who does that to us, she said. But you can't speak to me like that. It scares me, she added in a soft voice. He lowered his head and kissed her softly. I'm sorry, he said in a soft voice. I'm really, really sorry.
Oh no, this adult scene has been taken out and is exclusively available for Romancely Premium members. Check the description below to sign up. The love scene reference is Her Next Man's a Billionaire, Chapter 12, Love Scene 6.
She loved how she felt like she belonged with him, something that she hadn't felt in a long time.
Chapter 13. For the next few days, Emily, Erica, and Daniel were all over Athens' hotspots, taking in the sights. Erica loved the fact that her sister was having a good time, getting everything off her mind. This was actually the first time she had taken any time off that year, and Erica was happy that she had made it happen. When they got back to the hotel from the Parthenon, Daniel was just glad he was back in the suite with Erica. He thought she looked especially lovely in the white flowered halter dress she had on. Throughout the day, he had tried not to grab her and press her against a wall in one of the crevices. He wouldn't have cared whether he would have had an audience as he had his way with her. He was almost happy that Emily had just 2 more days before she went back home. They had made a choice to just have room service rather than go down for dinner that evening. Erica thought it was partly because Emily wanted to take advantage of the hotel spa, but she didn't mind. A nice quiet evening in Daniel's arms was all she needed. I feel like I have hardly got to see you this week, he said as he looked at her when they walked into the suite. On the brighter side, we have visited almost every single thing that we have to do out here. I guess we are good, Erica said with a smile. I mean, the museums, the Acropolis, Parthenon. I wouldn't do anything differently, she said with a smile. Daniel pushed her against the wall and looked at her. Really? Even if it means you and me not having some quality time? He asked in a low voice. She looked at him and smiled. I think that is definitely something to consider, she said in a low voice. What do you mean something to consider? You make me feel like this is some kind of favor you are doing me, Daniel said. She held his face in her hands and kissed him softly before she pulled back and looked into his eyes. You are trying to make me sad, aren't you? She asked, a soft look in her brown eyes. Her smile slowly faded as she looked at him. Her hands slowly dropped down to his chest, and he put his hands on her waist, pulling her close to him. Some of his hair fell out of place and shielded his eyes. She always loved it when that happened. She brought a hand up and gently swept the hair from his eyes. By the way she was looking at him, he could tell that she had something in mind. What? He asked as he looked at her. She bit her lower lip and shrugged. I know there is something in that pretty little head of yours. Aw, you think I'm pretty, she said, smiling. He shook his head and then took a step forward, holding her close to him.
Oh no, this adult scene has been taken out and is exclusively available for Romancely Premium members. Check the description below to sign up. The love scene references Her Next Man's a Billionaire, Chapter 13, Love Scene 7.
I shouldn't have done that, he said with his eyes closed. The honest truth was that Erica was freaked out too, but if she showed it, then they would have been two freaked out people, two blind men leading each other to a ditch. She forced out a smile and pressed her lips to his forehead, mostly to hide the fact that her lips were now quavering. We'll be okay, she said in a soft voice. She looked at him and suddenly adored his perfectly big eyes. We'll be okay, she said again, even though she was sure that was not the mindset she had. Her heart was beating hard in her chest, and she was almost too sure that she was hyperventilating.
Chapter 14. Erica had no idea how long her post-coital nap with Daniel had lasted by the time she finally got up. She looked at Daniel, who was still sleeping, and slowly walked to the bathroom where she quickly got cleaned up. She then put on a t-shirt and a pair of shorts before she tiptoed to the living room. She pulled out a 10-euro note and then shrugged. Maybe it costs more, she thought before she pulled out a 50 and then another 50. She then put on a pair of flip-flops and walked out of the suite. She could feel her heart pounding hard as she walked towards the elevator. She had never had to take the morning after pill before. That was always Emily. As far as Erica was concerned, condoms had always been her first choice. When the elevator got to the ground floor, she looked around and tried to recall where she had seen the pharmacy. She could feel her palms sweating as she walked to the reception. Hi, I'm looking for the drugstore. I saw it here somewhere. She started before the receptionist pointed to the right. Second door, you can't miss it, the receptionist said with a smile in a heavy Greek accent. Erica walked to the direction she had been pointed to, and when she got to the door, she took a step back and took a long, deep breath. She then walked in and began walking up and down the aisles. When she finally got to the section she was interested in, she sighed when she noticed 4 different companies. What the hell? She wondered as she looked at the choices in front of her. She had absolutely no idea what she was supposed to be doing there. She sighed and grabbed all 4 packs before she walked to the counter. She noticed the weird look the cashier was giving her as she rang her up. 86 euro, the cashier said. Erica handed her the 250s and began walking out. Your change, the cashier called out when Erica got to the door. Keep the change, Erica said before she practically ran out of there. She quickly made her way to the elevator. She walked into the elevator and took long, deep breaths. She was hoping that Emily was still in her room. When she walked out of the elevator, she walked straight up to her sister's room and knocked softly. Please be in, she prayed quietly as she knocked again. She suddenly banged her fist on the door a bit louder than she had anticipated, and Emily opened the door. Erica, what the hell? She asked as Erica walked into the suite. She walked straight up to the couch and sat down. What's going on? Emily asked as she walked up to where her sister was. I thought you were going to the spa, Erica said as she rubbed her hands together. I am. I was about to head out, Emily said before she sat down next to her sister. What is it? You look like you need a drink or something, she said. I do need a drink, a stiff one, Erica said. Emily stood up and walked to her minibar before she came back carrying 2 glasses of rum. I'm all out of ice, Emily said as she handed Erica a glass. Whoa there, she said when she saw Erica flashing down the contents of the glass. She barely had enough time to process what had just happened before Erica reached for her glass and flashed that down as well. Okay, now that we have that out of the way, will you tell me what the hell is going on with you? She asked as she took the glass from Erica and put it aside. Erica looked at her sister and then handed her the paper bag she got from the drugstore. What's this? Emily asked as she looked inside. What the hell is this? Did you? Emily was having a hard time understanding just what Erica was up to. I don't know what I'm supposed to do, which one I'm supposed to take. Erica started as she looked at her sister. Wait, you went raw with Daniel? You've only known him for like 3 weeks, Emily said. I don't need any judgment right now. All I want is to know which one I'm supposed to have, Erica said as she leaned back in the couch. Okay, chill. For starters, you don't need every drug known to man out there, Emily said as she took one of the packets and handed it to her sister. And thank God I just split a shot into 2 glasses, she added as she got up and grabbed 2 bottles of water from the minibar. Have that, every last drop. You need to dilute that booze, Emily said as she handed Erica 1 bottle. Thanks, Erica said as she took long gulps of the water. She looked at Emily and shrugged. I'm sorry I'm freaking out, but all this is so new to me, and I have no idea how I am supposed to handle it, she added. So how exactly did the ever-careful Erica end up here? Emily asked. Erica rolled her eyes at her sister. Okay, I'm really sorry if I am coming off as judgmental. I don't mean to. I'm just really surprised. We were just catching up, Erica started. Literally, Emily smiled. Erica looked at her and took another long sip of her water. Yes, literally, and I guess things just spiraled out of control. We didn't even realize until it was too late. And by too late, you mean? Emily started saying, but Erica looked at her just in time, forcing her to cut her sentence short. You know exactly what I mean, Erica said. She took another long sip and sighed. What the hell have I done, Em? She wondered out loud. Okay, you have to snap out of it. You are trying to read too much into a situation that isn't even a situation, Emily said. That doesn't make any sense, Erica sighed before she took another long sip. Okay, I think you are freaking out because you like this guy and you are scared that it might be all about a rebound, Emily said. Erica looked at her and shook her head. I have known you all my life, Erica. You cannot bullshit me, Emily added with a smile as she lifted the bottle up to Erica's lips, forcing her to take another drink. The half-liter bottle was now a quarter full. Erica looked at Emily and sighed. Damn it, I'm so fucked, she said in a low tone. No, you're not. I like him. A lot, and you know very well that usually doesn't happen with me, Emily said, making Erica laugh. She took one last gulp and put the bottle down. So, from the way you are freaking out, I'm guessing you haven't DTR'd, she said. Erica laughed again. DTR? What are we teens? You know what I mean. When are you going to stop playing this god-awful game and just do it already? Emily pointed out with a smile. Erica looked at her and shook her head. I don't know whether I want to rush all this. Has he given you any sign that maybe he is into you as much as you are into him? Emily asked. Erica took a long, deep breath. He told me he loves me, she said in a whisper. Emily raised an eyebrow. Whoa, he sure works fast, she said with a smile. And you have been exclusive with each other for almost a month. Just take the pill and get him to the clinic just to make sure everything is okay, and then just sit back and enjoy the ride. Erica was still not convinced. She could not just sit back and relax. That was not who she was. That was not her MO. But I am really scared. This could all be a mistake. This could all just be one big mistake, Erica said. Right now you are just feeling like this because the possibility of having little Daniel babies with beautiful green eyes is a possibility. But the truth is that you should not be freaking out, Emily said, as she popped a pill out of the pack she had handed Erica earlier. Have this. She gave Erica the pill and opened the other bottle of water. You are probably going to be nauseated and fatigued, so I recommend rest for the next 12 or so hours, okay? Erica nodded before she put the pill in her mouth and washed it down with the water Emily had given her. She put the bottle down and exhaled loudly. How did you ever do this? Erica asked. Do what? Emily asked, raising an eyebrow. This unprotected sex so many times. Erica began before Emily put a hand up. Hey there. You make it sound like I was just sleeping around with every Tom, Dick, and Harry, she said. Erica shrugged and Emily's eyes grew wide. Come on. It was a lot of unprotected sex with one person who I loved, she said. But the freaking out and everything? Erica asked. Oh, ye of limited knowledge. Ever heard of safe days? I trusted Finn and he trusted me. The emergency pill only came into play when we got a little careless, and then I switched to the daily pill, she said. Erica shrugged. And yes, I did remember to take it every single day. So you never had a pregnancy scare? Erica asked. Emily shook her head. Never. Not once, she said, almost too proudly. The diaphragm was my next move before Finn and I parted ways. I have been seeing things your way for a while now, she added. For the first time since she walked into that room, Erica smiled and shook her head. Seeing things my way? She echoed. Emily nodded. I know you always thought that I was the loose one, but apart from Finn, I never really went raw with anyone else, Emily said. Erica looked at her and shook her head in surprise. 28 years, and this was the first time her sister was thinking of coming clean about such a thing. She raised an eyebrow. What? She asked in surprise. Yeah, I guess Finn was just the one, and when he went to Mayo, I guess I just felt like we couldn't survive the strain. And we didn't, Emily said. So all the other guys. Erica started, and Emily shook her head. Joe? Never even saw the color of my panties, Emily said. Erica laughed. Mickey? She asked. Got all the bases covered except the one, her sister said. Rudy? Erica asked as she looked at Emily. Each answer was surprising her more and more. Too German. His idea of phone sex was telling me how much he wanted to watch me take a shit, Emily said. Erica frowned and shook her head. That is my cue to leave, she said as she got up. Emily stood up and threw her arms around her sister. Thanks for talking to me. I really needed that, Erica said. Yes, you did. Just do what I told you. Take that trip to the clinic and just take a chill pill, Emily said as she pulled away. See you tomorrow? Brunch maybe? Erica smiled. Sounds great, Emily responded before Erica walked out of the suite. When Erica walked into her suite, Daniel was still asleep. She took off her shorts and tiptoed to the bathroom. After relieving herself, thanks to the waterboarding session her sister had given her earlier, she climbed back into bed and looked at her sleeping prince. Wait, did I just think of him as my sleeping prince? She wondered as she looked at him. She gently touched the side of his face, and his eyelids fluttered open. Sorry, I didn't mean to wake you, she said in a whisper as she looked into his eyes. He gave her a groggy smile. That's okay, I like waking up next to you. Hungry? She asked. Not yet, he said as he moved close to her. She smiled and turned around before he draped an arm around her, and they both slept through the night. When she woke up the next morning, Erica's heart was pounding. After sleeping on it, she decided to take Emily's advice. Wait, where are we going? Daniel asked when Erica told him where they were going. Erica had just told him to get dressed and had just now told him where they were headed. She looked at him and nodded. "We are going to the clinic," she said as she turned her attention back on the road. "Well, you could have told me or something. I mean, I don't mind it and everything, but seriously, Erica," Daniel said as he looked at the road ahead. "Wait, what happened?" "When we woke up, you were totally okay. Very much unlike last night," he said. "Last night, I went down to the drugstore and got myself an emergency pill. Apparently, I am going to be really fucked up in a few hours, and I really want to get this clinic thing out of the way," she said. "This clinic thing? You make it sound like it is some weird thing we have to get over," Daniel said as he looked at her. "It is a dumb, weird thing we have to get over," Erica said. "I mean, we are going to have our sexual lives literally opened up in front of each other, and I have nothing to hide, but you don't know where I've been and my ex." She started before she shook her head. "You don't know where I've been either," he said in a soft voice. "Yes, and that is why I have to do this. We have to do this," she said as she looked around. "The hospital is supposed to be here somewhere," she said in a low voice. "Right ahead," Daniel said as he pointed at a big building on their left. Erica pulled over in front of the building. "So I'm scared. I'm really, really scared. I mean, I haven't had a checkup ever since I found out Eli was cheating and God knows what." She trailed off and he unbuckled his seatbelt before he leaned forward and gathered her in his arms. "Why do I have a feeling that there is something more to this?" he asked. She pulled away from him and looked into his eyes. Her eyes were glistening, and she knew that any time now, a tear would roll down her cheek. "You told me you loved me and I didn't say anything," she said. "I told you. You didn't have to say anything," he said as a tear rolled down her cheek. He used his thumb to brush it away. "I'm falling for... No, I love you. I actually, honestly do love you, and it scares me because I haven't even known you for a month," she said. Daniel brushed off another tear. "What if you..." She never had a chance to finish her sentence. Daniel was kissing her deeply, seeking her tongue out with his. "I am not Elijah," he said in a soft voice when he pulled away. "It's just Eli," she smiled. "Shut up, Hayes, you are ruining the moment," he said, making her laugh. "Seriously, this is a clean slate for both of us, and I want that with you." She held his hand and smiled at him. "I want it with you too," she said in a whisper. He got out and walked round the front of the car before opening the door on the driver's side. "Let's just do this and start a new future," he said as he led her to the hospital's entrance. "Maybe I can finally make you those pancakes I promised." She looked at him and interlaced her fingers with his. "And I can promise you, they are pretty damn awesome," he added as they walked through the hospital entrance. A smile played on her lips as they walked to the front desk. Maybe Daniel and Emily were right. Taking a chill pill, sitting back and enjoying the ride was exactly what she was going to do. The end.